So in this segment, we're going to be talking about this dude saying Brexit trade deals must allow low-skilled migration. So this is more about the India trade deal than anything, but it's kind of the muddled thinking of Brexiteers who are like, oh, we should kick out foreigners because we'll just get British people to do those jobs, and our wages are being suppressed by foreigners. So once they leave, wages will go up dramatically, and there will be no cost of living problems. And the kind of other thinking of kind of conservatives where they're like, oh, we need way more people because we need people to fill vacancies, and yeah, pretty much like the jobs British people typically don't want to do, but also they want a massively excessive labour market to kind of keep wages down to an extent. And the only way to really combat that is having strong government legislation and having higher minimum wage. That's why other countries that have freedom of movement don't have as many problems as we have. Our minimum wage is incredibly low given the cost of living, which is a government problem. It's not a problem on any foreign person that comes here. They're not to blame. It's the government that have caused these problems through their crappy policies on minimum wage. So I just want to caveat with that kind of long-winded thing. Anyways, we go to this article by Ryan Bourne. Free trade agreement discussions between the UK and India have raised the prospect of the UK easing visa applications for skilled Indian migrants to come here for work. Let's not forget that Theresa May, I think, vetoed the EU-India trade deal because of the fact that India wanted visas for Indian people, easy access for Indian people to come to, I think, the EU, probably the UK specifically, because the language barrier isn't as bad, because a lot of more Indian people are taught English in school. And Theresa May was like, more brown people? Nah, fam, that's not for me. At least that's what I remember from the story. Migration Observatory data from 2019 shows Indians already make up 20% and 14% of the UK workforces in health and social care and IT industries respectively. And I wonder what those kind of percentages are for people from specific European countries. Given rising demand in the former and shortages of workers in the latter, a streamlined Tier 2 skilled visa process as part of a broader trade agreement has a clear rationale. I mean, sure, but we should be doing this for everyone then. For all shortage industries, it should be like this, not just part of a trade deal. That's what more of an Australian-style immigration policy is, isn't it? It's more aimed at, where do you have shortages and how do you deal with them, rather than just sticking them in trade deals. I mean, I suppose it's a leverage point, but it's not that great a leverage point. But as we debate the prospect of easier non-EU immigration, I mean, do people really want that? Because I remember there was a dude who called in to, I think it was the James O'Brien show, and said he voted for Brexit because there's too many brown faces at Tesco's. Is this the Brexit he voted for? I don't think it is. It's worth pondering a fundamental question. Does distinguishing between skilled and unskilled workers actually make economic sense? I mean, it really doesn't, but one of the main reasons they use the phrase unskilled is it's easy. Those jobs are meant to be easy to pick up, but doing those jobs efficiently is quite difficult. It can be quite labour intensive, like physically, and also it's just there to kind of keep wages down in certain sectors for the most part. The newly elected mayor of New York, Eric Adams, got pillared recently for lamenting the impact of the pandemic work from home habits on low skilled workers in the city's Dunkin' Donuts and shoe shine businesses. I mean, shoe shine business. I was thinking of the old, the kid who has that rag which cleans people's shoes, I suppose. But I mean, sure, but that's where these businesses do have to kind of adapt a bit. His phraseology drew righteous anger from the American left. The suggestion that any job is low skill is a myth. I mean, realistically, you got jobs where you can work from home and jobs where you can't work from home. That's really the main distinction in some of these hospitality jobs. Anyways. Is a myth perpetuated by wealthy interests, says US Congresswoman AOC, which is true. They do use it to kind of underpay people in certain sectors. Such outrage is largely performative. I mean, it's really not, considering she was a bartender. Like, she would know about this. Bartenders in America aren't paid that well because it's reliant on tips. So it's just stupid. There is a legitimate concern to question the framing from an economic perspective. Talking about skill as it's a linear metric that workers have different levels of only models of policy discussions. I mean, these guys talk really far above us, where sometimes it's very hard to understand what they're talking about because they talk like they're talking to university students, or I was a university student, like proper academics. When economists think about skills, we really mean a bunch of job-specific expertise and transferable attributes that make a person well-suited or not suited for a job. They're talking about qualifications or some sort of expertise certificate, really. That's, I think, generally what they're talking about. If you have high abilities at football or coding, you will likely make a greater contribution to your club or company's profitability, giving you leverage when negotiating for higher pay. I mean, that's not always true, though. It depends on your specific role. For example, if you're the world's best goalkeeper, you're not going to get paid as much as certain, strikers who aren't the best in goal scoring, for example. If you acquire talents for a job through expertise, experience, or study, you become less easily replaceable by others to an extent. But given the fact that every other joker has a degree, there are shortages in some areas, but it can be replaced. Footballers get paid more than, say, ice hockey players because there is a bigger viewing market for their talents here. And also, I think people pay more to watch football matches than they do for ice hockey games. But ice hockey is not that big in the UK. In other countries like Canada, for example, it might be the case that ice hockey players are paid more than Canadian footballers because ice hockey is a big sport there and it looks insane. Tiger Woods is skilled at golf, but will probably make a fairly useless plumber. I mean, that's not really true. I mean, maybe initially, but he could probably learn it. Tiger Woods is no clown. I have a master's degree, but if I time travel back to Elizabethan shipyard, I'd be very low skilled for employment for the employment office. I mean, that's not true. I mean, if you had a master's degree in architecture or something like that, would you be that useless? Or something to do with shipbuilding, would you be useless? No. I mean, these people, man. It therefore makes little sense to describe someone as a low-skilled worker as if it denotes an aggregate measure of one's capabilities. Because, yeah, it's true that it doesn't take into account someone's potential of becoming, gaining skills, especially when you do need a certain amount of training to do jobs. Like, fair enough, certain jobs may require more training, but not a lot more, especially if they're like entry-level jobs. Unfortunately, the term low-skilled worker has different connotations in politics, which is generally used as synonymous with either a person having a low level of formal education or being paid a low wage. I mean, even if you have a low level of I guess if you count apprenticeships as formal education, then there'd be an issue, but they really use like unskilled people just as like a baton to hit people with, so they don't have to increase wages. Trades that might require low skills, or I mentioned that bit, that is elitism, it's unhelpful. More pertinently for these trade negotiations, skills in immigration law get proxied for by the wage rate of a formal job. I mean, this whole paragraph made no sense to me. So what I'll do is I'll go through it slowly and we'll try and figure it out, but no promises there. Is more pertinently for those trade negotiations, skilled in immigration law gets proxied for by the wage rate for a formal job offer open to a desired migrant. And it should be an immigrant workers' pay of today is deemed the best signal for whether someone has desirable skills to actually work here. I think he's saying they don't actually take the potential into account. But if we talk about one of the bits he talks about, so somehow I missed that part of this article, which I don't know how I've managed to do that unless I went over it without my brain being an autopilot. But there's a bit more I want to talk about, which is he talks about the triple lock thing. Maybe my highlighter didn't kick in, I don't know. But he talks about how the wage, like the minimum wage you need to make is 25k a year, or £10, 10 pence an hour, or the government's endorsed rate in any eligible industry. The skilled visa is really about keeping out migrant workers from doing low-wage jobs rather than an earnest attempt at judging worker abilities. And it's there to really, it's meant to push, I think, British people into doing these jobs, which, are fairly low pay. If it's below £10 an hour, it's fairly low, and so people typically don't want to do those jobs because generally they're quite labour intensive and don't pay very well. The key to resolving these issues is to pay people properly, but business owners typically don't want to do that. The skilled visa is really about keeping up migrants, yet a migration system with a crude wage threshold as a proxy for skills creates two obvious problems. And I think the starting wage for a nurse is 21,000, I think, so you would exclude nurses from this pay scale. It doesn't make sense. First, it can exacerbate genuine skill shortages in industries where Brits are reluctant or unable to fill those roles at economic wage rates. And the key there is to increase the wages. Like, there's no argument to say, you cannot argue that, we should get people in from abroad because British people don't want to work for crap wages. Because why should foreign people have to work for crap wages then? The only reason they would do that is to send the money home, which I have no issue with that. But you create a system where that's the only thing that happens. Indian restaurants have struggled to find chefs because they don't pay very well. They really don't. At affordable pay over the last year, they don't pay very well. I mean, if you're a chef working in the kitchen, if you work full time, should you be making less than 25,000 a year? No, you shouldn't be. especially if you're the tandoori chef or the head chef. You should not be making under 25k a year, but they do, and hence why this creates problems. For example, this harms these consumers who want their curries at low prices. Maybe consumers have to suck it up and pay more for curries so people can get paid well. It's so stupid to make the case that, oh, I want my food cheap, so you shouldn't get a proper wage. Like, get out of here. Are you stupid? Maybe Mr. Telegraph guy, we shouldn't pay you properly because I want to read cheap articles, huh? More importantly, filtering applicants in this way uses only today's snapshot of migrants' earning power as a guide for their future contributions. I mean, this is the bit where he talks about economic potential and the, like how in Britain, it's easier to get access to capital, things like that. So it could maybe help them create businesses, etc. You have more access to an formally educated workforce as well. But the point he's making here is absolutely insane, right? People, you should be able to pay chefs less because people want cheap curries. Like, suck it up, dog. Deal with it. You got to pay a bit more for your curry. Who cares? Honestly, it's not that deep. If you can't pay, one or two, say £2 or £3 more each for food when you go out, maybe you shouldn't be going out, dog. Maybe you should stay home. Go on YouTube and learn how to make said curries. But anyways, look, I'm going to leave it there. That was the only bit extra I wanted to talk about. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.